This is a Sandy Boy Productions podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to Why is Everyone Yelling? With Lindsay Hine. I'm your host, Lindsay, and I'm so grateful you're here today. This is a podcast for parents or anybody helping raise kids, and my hope is that you will walk away from each episode feeling encouraged. This is a quote from my guest this week, Ralphie Jacobs. Another truth is that each and every home is going to have different boundaries, and there's nothing that says this is the right way to parent. There are lots of different rights, many different kinds of rights. So my hope is that you can take a little bit from each of these conversations and build what's right for your family. So this is episode 19, and I'm talking with Ralphie Jacobs, who is the founder of Simply on Purpose. Ralphie is an educator and a speaker on positive parenting. She's the mother of 4 girls, and she does a really good job giving tangible steps and pieces of advice for how to calm the chaos in your home. Look, it's never going to be totally calm. My house is never going to be chaos free, and your house probably isn't either. But there are tools that we can take as parents to make things feel a little bit calmer. One of the common themes in this episode that I love that Ralphie talks about is that parenting is about our parents' behavior. We can't fix our kids. We can't change how they act, but we can change how we act. And that will change our homes. I am excited about this conversation, and I know there's at least one thing that every single person listening today needs to hear, and that you'll walk away feeling empowered to implement at least one thing into your home that Ralphie and I talk about. If you love this episode, if you've loved any of the episodes, please consider leaving us a rating and review on whatever app you are listening on. My heart is filled with passion and excitement for this podcast, and it's with your help through sharing it on social media, through leaving ratings and reviews, through telling your neighbor who also happens to be a parent, hey, I heard this really great episode on this podcast. That's how this thing's going to grow. And if you can help me spread the word, I would appreciate it so very much. All right, enjoy this conversation with Ralphie Jacobs. Well, today on Why is Everyone Yelling? I'm so excited to have Ralphie Jacobs on the show. Welcome to the show, Ralphie.
Hey, welcome. Nope, I'm on your show. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, you're used to running the show on Instagram and all those things yourself.
That's right.
I took your audio course recently. We were on a trip in Florida, and I got to listen through almost every single one of the courses on there. And man, it was such a great time to like fuel my mom brain with the information you provided, because we took this trip to get away and kind of like escape from everything. We drove down to Florida, stayed at an Airbnb, and I would go running on the beach and just give myself a little 9-minute lesson and then pop on some music. And man, it was just so helpful. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad that you listened to it. Yeah, it is a very, very special course.
So when I announced to my friends on Instagram that I was starting this podcast, so many people recommended having you on the show. If I look back on that thread, I feel like 3/4 of the responses are Ralphie, Simply on Purpose. So needless to say, a lot of people are going to be excited to hear from you today. Can you kind of just introduce your family and what you do at Simply on Purpose?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm living here in Austin, Texas. My husband and I have 4 daughters, beautiful daughters, and Simply on Purpose is a feed that I run where we just talk about living our lives with purpose and strengthening our families and our homes, and really making a deliberate culture in our homes. And also I talk a lot about parenting and positive parenting, how to use our great power as parents to help navigate our children's lives and to kind of shine that light of where they want to be, where they like to go, and to just kind of be that model and using a lot of positivity to discipline. And I know that kind of sounds like, well, that's an impossibility, but the way that our brains work, it actually is the very best way to parent. And there's a lot of research behind that, scientific research. So people love it because it feels like truth. It's gentle and kind, which is where the pendulum is swinging right now anyway. But it also has a lot of science-based truth behind it, which dads love as well because it's concise, it's lawful, and it's predictable, and it really helps children to feel safe and for them to thrive in their environment because it's a really encouraging environment.
Yeah, I like how you said the pendulum is swinging that way because you're definitely seeing it trending towards that in parenting today. And, I've talked about this quite a bit, but a lot of this is like you hear people say, oh, well, my parents did it this way and I'm just fine. Like I feel like that is like the most common thing people say. Like my parents spanked me or my parents, kept me in my place and I'm doing just fine. And I have been reading and researching more and more on this. And honestly, my heart, like this all started selfishly. Like I wanted a less chaotic home, right? Like
Yeah.
who wants to be yelling all the time? I say this to my kids. I say, it doesn't feel good to yell, does it? Like at each other. I know sometimes we need to run outside and get some energy out, like angry energy out, but like screaming at each other doesn't feel good. And then I also like that you just brought up the dads, because one of the things I want to talk to you about is bringing our partners on board, because a lot of times in parenting, one of the parents finds this like new life-changing thing that's going to help the family. But if the other person hasn't read the books or hasn't done the research, it's hard to be on the exact same page, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's very difficult. And as soon as you can get on the same page, your family will propel forward exponentially. But it is a tricky thing to do because you have to be humble. You kind of have to leave your ego at the door. That's a hard thing for adults to do.
Well, one of the quotes I pulled from the course I took of yours is parenting is not about raising children who will never make mistakes. It is about being a safe place for them when they do.
Mm.
I love that. Let's talk about that because so much of that, I don't know, listeners, where you are in your parenting, but providing that environment when kids are young, I know is so important for, when you have a 15-year-old teenager and he or she wants to come talk to you because they're scared about what their friends are doing,
Yeah.
It almost makes me tear up saying that.
Mm.
So can you talk about being a safe parent? What does that mean?
Well, to me, and I say this all the time, it's kind of a catchphrase, is to stay safe or to be a safe parent. And to be a safe parent to me means that you're consistent and your children can rely on you. And you're that emotional touch point for them that they can come to in good times and in bad. And that you have unrelenting, unconditional love for them. And I want this perception of fear-based parenting that it works to change.
Mm.
I mean, it does work, but it's so short term and it's so shallow because what we're doing is we're using fear to nullify a child's will. We override their agency by using fear of like pain or loss of something that they love. And that's not a choice. Like there's no choice involved in that. A child can't use their authority of being an individual to be able to be responsible for their own decisions. So they learn to shirk responsibility. They're more driven by people bossing them around rather than making their own choices and becoming experts on themselves.
Mm.
So it's really, I really want that to change. And I feel like that's my mission, that I want children to learn to love to behave well and for them to be solution finders and self-driven and confident and resilient. That's what we want, right? That's like the long-term goal. And the most important thing that I can teach parents is for them to learn how to look for what's good in their children, because children are inherently good. They want to do things to please their parents and to make their parents proud of them. But 95% of the good that children do in homes is completely ignored. And parents are 5 to 6 times more likely to give attention to their children when they're misbehaving, because it's such a default in our brains to look for danger, to look for what's going wrong so that we can fix it. That's just like generations and generations of evolving behind us, where we're still looking for danger. We're still looking for what's going wrong in this situation. So we ignore the good, we pay attention to the bad. And what science tells us is that's a reinforcer. We're just reinforcing all the negative behavior, because the number one thing that children want in a parent and in their lives is attention from their parents. They just want parental attention. So we pay attention to them when they're misbehaving. We ignore them when they're behaving well, which means that we're reinforcing behaviors that we just don't want to reinforce. And there's nothing more effective at changing behavior for the better than to find what they're already doing well, because our children are already doing good things, and reinforcing that through positive reinforcement. And what you'll find is it's like a chain reaction. You can't isolate behaviors. It's impossible to isolate behaviors. You say, oh, I'm just going to manipulate this behavior and modify this behavior, and it's not going to affect anything else. It's not possible. They're like links in a chain. If you pull them forward together, they'll all move forward together. So if I just say, oh, that really looks like you're reading a really good book, and you just walk off, you don't need to say anything else. You just reinforce the fact that they're reading. It will help them to not fight with their sibling later, because what we find is when children feel well, they behave well. And when they feel good about themselves, then it's easier for them to do good in their environment. And just good behavior generalizes. So I really, it's just the best way to encourage children to thrive, to encourage them to see themselves and kind of like write that new role for them. I think that we sometimes dig a really deep groove for children by labeling them with negative labels. And then not only do they start performing that role for us, but we parent them to that role. What we need to do instead is help them to see themselves in a different light and create that light for them. I know you've heard that phrase, let there be light, and there was light. That's what a parent can do. They can help create good in their homes.
You know what? My parents got my oldest son the adventure Bible for kids last summer, and I've been really bad about going into it. And we literally just read, I've been reading with them one chapter a night, and we just read the creation story a couple nights ago. And so much of it, I was like, oh, I don't think I've really thought super thoroughly about how much applicable, this is silly because it's the Bible, but how much applicable just tiny little pieces like that, let there be light, can just be applied to everyday life. That sounds silly of me, but it's true.
Yeah, and let it kind of sounds easy, right? Like just let it happen. And I think that we overthink things way too much. We assign adult meaning to things way too much. If we could keep a child's perspective, but then use our power as an adult to shine the spotlight where it's supposed to be, I think that would be like the perfect formula.
You know, what I struggle with is when I bring those conversations to life with my kids throughout the day, like, you're doing awesome. I'm so proud of you. Oh, that's so creative. Those little things. And then we still melt down at the end of the day, or then they're still disrespectful. And I think this is a selfish, did everything right. Why are you responding like that? Can you walk through kind of the psychology of that, and, why I'm responding the way I am and why they might be responding the way they are, and how we can kind of keep the peace?
Yeah, sure. what we have going on here is two separate stories. We have an adult story, we have a child story, and sometimes we project our adult story onto our child. And we forget that they have their own individual story. So maybe they're just having a human moment. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe something happened on the playground that really hurt their feelings, but they haven't, felt safe enough to talk to you about it yet. And I also, that going back to assigning that adult meaning, is that we take it personal. Like, oh, how could you, like,
Yep.
oh, don't you have any moral character, but, and I think that is so interesting that when we have like a bad moment, we're like, oh, we're just tired, like we give an excuse for it. But when our children have a bad moment, we assign like bad moral character. But I think it's just, we have to remember it's not personal, it's developmental. Most of these things that children go through are just, they're just going through them. And we need to just have that respect for that struggle, tantrums, being surly, tattletaling, whining, like all of it. And so I think the goal here is just to take a deep breath. Remember, it's not personal, it's developmental. They're their own human being with their own little kind of universe surrounding them. And then to learn to stay curious longer, be willing to listen longer, watch what's happening longer, so that you can respond in a sound way, that you can respond with that love first and connection. Because what we know is that if we connect with our child first and say something empathetic like, oh, I hear you. You must be really embarrassed. I'm so sorry that happened. Then it's so much more likely for them to cooperate, for them to listen to us, and for there to be real learning there, rather than for us to just like kind of lecture and have a monologue. It's really important to connect, and so they cooperate. And being consistent, that's like a trick too, is to just try to be consistent, having those clear expectations so they know how to behave well. I think that's a really proactive way to parent, is to have a high level of teaching in your home and a high level of that's how our family behaves kind of instruction. This is what we do. This is what's not okay in our home. This is something that, yeah, maybe other families talk about it, or they do jump on the couch, or they do burp at the table, or whatever it is. But those are things that we don't do in our home, and these are the reasons why. And we keep to that like elevated kind of like, you're discussing it with me as a counsel, rather than just kind of being the autocratic, strict ruler who demands exact obedience. Being more of I honor your choices. I honor what you're saying. I honor your emotions, and I welcome those. And these are the boundaries of our home, and they are firm and they're consistent. But I honor your choices, and I will let you learn from those choices, because that's really where maturity lies. And we can go on to like talking about how children fight and what goes on with that, even with those choices as well. There's just so many things that a parent can do to help encourage more peace in the home. Like things that we say, the verbiage that we use, instead of like using threats, you can use encouragements where you're attaching a positive phrase to it rather than negative. So if I say like, if you don't clean that up right now, then you're not getting dessert, something like that. You can use an encouragement where you say, all the children that can clean up their space can have dessert. So you're saying, instead of taking something away, you're adding to their life.
I love that.
Yeah, just little things like that. And there's so many, you can like Pinterest or Google, like there's so much information out there. And I think that's really overwhelming for parents. The goal, the umbrella goal, is really just using your power to add positivity and good in your child's life and create positive associations with positive behavior.
Yeah, one of the phrases I use all the time now after listening to your course is that positive, instead of saying don't get any water on the floor, I need you to try to keep all the water in the bathtub.
Yeah.
That's so simple, But when they hear it that way, it just doesn't sound like I'm shaking my finger at them. It sounds like I'm giving them a responsibility. Like,
Yeah.
hey, it's your job. It's your job right now to try to keep all the water in the bathtub. And then it also feels less like I'm nagging on people all day.
Right. And you're skill building. That's
Yeah.
the super cool thing. Not only are you no longer the no parent and the nag, and the warden,
Mm-hmm.
but you're the person that is like, yes, and let's build a skill. Like, yeah, that's the goal of parenting always, is to give your child wisdom and tools that will help them in the future. So if we're saying no, knock it off, stop, leave that alone, don't touch, we're just getting the behavior to stop for a short term. But what can they do instead? And that's something that I always say too, is to always rely on your child's desire to have fun. So show them where they can have fun. Again, shine the spotlight. Where is it going to go? How is that behavior going to move forward in the future? Because children that are just like little obedient robots who live in fear, who don't know what to touch and what not to touch, that's not living a life. That's not a life of a child that his brain is being used in lots of different ways and neurons are snapping and wiring. And we want children to discover and to touch, and we just need to help them to show them where they can go and what they can do.
Yeah, and it feels a lot better to not be on that repeat of no, 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 no. Like that gets so exhausting. That being said, I mean, just it being a parent is hard. So even if you are implementing these things, it's not like you're going to have this like totally 100% peaceful life. It's still
Oh.
exhausting to constantly redirect and provide, feel like you always have to provide these things, but I think it becomes more natural, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And when I just started studying this, I was like, man, this sounds like so much work.
Yeah, the work, yeah, because you have
Right?
to be super intentional.
You do, but like you said, it becomes more of a second nature. There are times where, okay, like just the other day, for example, I have all daughters, and one of my youngest, she loves to wear dresses, and she's always like doing somersaults and
Uh-huh.
everything. And my initial, gut wrench, like knee jerk, is to say, you can't wear dresses anymore if you're showing your underwear.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that's a threat. But but it took me a minute to be like, no, I need to phrase that in a positive way. As long as you can keep your underwear covered, then you can wear a dress.
Mm-hmm.
So it just takes a minute for you to be like, okay, no, I need to phrase this in a positive way. And of course, I mean, I like to call it long-term lazy. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It is work in the beginning, but like I said before, you're building skills so that in the future, 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, you are not having to help your child clean up huge problems that will really hurt them long term. My mom would always say, little kids, little problems, big kids, big
Mm-hmm.
problems. And I tell you what, now that I have a 17-year-old and a 6-year-old, it's so true. It's those big decisions that they make, those bigger problems, those bigger hurdles. You're going to be so grateful that you taught them how to clean up a mess, that you taught them how to have correct social behavior when they're out of your home. You'll be so grateful that you put in the time and the work now rather than later, because you really want to have a return on that investment later on down the road.
What's the most surprising thing to you about having teenagers?
Oh, how awesome they are.
Mm.
Honestly, I love teenagers. And that's a surprise because um, my degree is in early childhood education. So I am all about the toddlers. I love preschool. I love toddlers. I love 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. It's my favorite age. But I absolutely love teenagers. They're so independent. They're so helpful. They're so resilient. They're determined. They bring a lot of joy and laughter into your home because you can communicate and kind of like bounce things off of each other and keep the jokes going. They just are. incredible people that you see like so much potential in a teenager. They're just ready to rock it off and just make such a good impression on the world. I absolutely have loved having teenagers in my home.
I imagine this is probably a little bit different because I have all boys and you have all girls. But I know that when kids become teenagers, they do need a little more space. That's just part of life.
Hmm.
And my oldest is 8 and he's up to my shoulders now. And I just I just want to bottle it up because I know that when he is a 13-year-old boy, the likeliness of him wanting to snuggle me on the couch it's okay that he probably won't want to do that. It's totally normal and fine. But I just I don't want to, I'm sad already for the moment when all of my boys are bigger than me and nobody wants to needs mommy.
Mm. Your role changes. It just changes. And like I said, in the beginning, you become even more of that emotional touch point where they come back to you and they come back and they come back. They're like a boomerang.
Yeah.
They just keep coming back. And is this okay, Mom? What do you think about this? Do you like this? Or I have this problem. Can you help me with it? And again, these are bigger problems, right? Like things that will take more of your mental power and your resilience as a parent and that stamina. Just last night, we stayed up quite late answering some big questions and kind of talking things through with my oldest. And I tell you, though, it's really so enjoyable to watch them grow that way. And yes, like I don't get the snuggles and all of that stuff quite the same way, but it you do get a return when they come and they sit down with you and say, "Hey, Mom, let's watch a movie together, or let's go on a walk together, or let's play a game together." You know that they still want to be with you in the way that works for them.
Now, one thing I do want to hit on before we move to the next topic is kind of going back a little bit, and that's not calling out disrespectful behavior. I know that's kind of like one of the things that you talk about, and I struggle with this one. And even though I know as it spills out of my mouth, if I say you're so disrespectful, I know very well that that is feeding into their brain that I think they're disrespectful. And I also struggle with it because I'm like, but he needs to know what he's doing is wrong. And then you come and you say he knows that. That's why he's doing it. So how do we navigate that without feeling like we're being walked on? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for all, I would say any age, really, one of the ways that children can gain back control in kind of a frantic way is they'll take the driver's seat. And what I like to imagine is like a train on tracks. Chug, 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 chug. What children will try is they'll just try to knock the train off the tracks. So your job as the parent is to just grab that train up, pick it back up gently, and put it right back on the tracks. So you just go back to expectations, or you can say something that helps cue the behavior in a correct way. So if they say, I don't want to, Mom, something like that, then you can say, oh, try again. So you just you pick up the train and put it back on its tracks. And you're just like, oh, that's not what we do. Let's try that again. You can say something like, sounds like you need some time. Your emotions are really high right now. And I really regret things that I say when my emotions are really high and I say things that are hurtful. So I'm going to give you a chance to just calm down and then we'll come back when this is a little bit later. It's just a way of gaining control. And if you can imagine, I mean, there's really interesting studies about control and how if you don't feel in control of a situation, there is so much stress. People prefer driving over flying because they're in control of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. Even though the statistics are that flying is significantly more expensive than driving. And the reason is because, they just are in the driver's seat. They're the one in control. And so when my child is yelling stuff like that at me, like, you're so rude. You're the meanest mom in the whole world. I can't believe that you keep telling me what to do and you're so bossy or whatever it is. I'm thinking to myself, she feels frantic. Like there's no control whatsoever. So how can I give her a little bit of control? Okay, let's, would you like to do it this way or would you like to do it that way? And it's the same for like a 6-year-old, like my daughter who's doing virtual learning right now. There's so many times where I'm like, she just doesn't feel in control of her situation. I just need to give her some control. Are you ready to do it now or after we have a snack? Because either way, she's going to do it, right? And that's the secret with parenting is like make a choice that either way, in the end, they're still going to do what needs to be done. Would you like to brush with the green toothbrush or the red toothbrush? Would you like to do it, for 3 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever it is. So you're giving them some sense of control because we just feel so stressed and so much anxiety if we don't have any identity and there's no separation between me and another person if they're in control of my life.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, the giving choices thing has helped tremendously. Giving choices, but not too many choices, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because they get real overwhelmed with too many choices.
Yeah, always. The go-to is two. Just one or the other. If you give too many, sometimes parents will have like 7 different colors of toothbrushes. Just give them 2.
I think that's been life-changing. Yeah. Like by the time I got to my 3rd kid, like that little methods like that, had I figured that out with number 1, I think that the toddler years would have been a lot easier. I mean, every kid is different. Some toddlers' tantrums are much more severe than others, regardless. It's the nature of the child, right? But I think if some of those tactics that I learned later on, I was one of those people, Ralphie, that like prided myself in not reading the parenting books. Like, we're just going to figure this out. Like, it's fine. We're all humans here. We can figure out how to do this. And then as I got through, I think my oldest was 4 and I had 2 other little ones. I was like, I need help.
Oh, I love it. I think it's funny too when I talk about how parenting is really all about parent behavior and it's not about children behavior and how we're modifying our behavior and not our child's. That when you buy that parenting book, it's a self-help book. It's like, yes, how can I fix myself rather than how can I fix my child? Because we can't fix our kids. We can only change our behavior and change the environment, which is in control of the child. There's no good direct control over children.
Hey friends, a quick break here. I want to tell you about Indie Maven. I know we have listeners all over the country and world listening to this podcast, but this is specific to Indianapolis. That is my hometown where I live, and I just want to share a little bit about Indie Maven. Do you wish you could be as knowledgeable about what's happening in Indianapolis as you were before things got busy with your career, kids, family, and friends? Are you looking to get more engaged and active in your city through the best recommendations ever? Well, Indie Maven is a community that connects women in Indianapolis and its surrounding neighborhoods through captivating and rich storytelling, crazy fun events, and best of all, an audience of highly engaged, badass women. To learn more about Indie's happenings, the trailblazing women making it all happen, and to start making a difference in your community, join the Maven movement. Go to Indie Maven to sign up for their free newsletter, learn about upcoming events, and join their membership program for perks valued at thousands of dollars from local businesses. I am a member of Indie Maven, and I love what they are doing in the Indianapolis community. Go to indiemaven.com to check it out. All right, enjoy the rest of my conversation with Ralphie Jacobs. Why do you think that it's finally shifting towards this? Because, I mean, gosh, of course we want to change. Look at the history books. Like, we don't want to stay the same. So, like, in any aspect, right? Like, change is a great thing, but people are still resistant to this because of that line I brought up at the beginning. My parents did it this way. My grandparents did it this way. I was respectful. But like our eyes are opened now. So why is all that? Why is this just now becoming like big?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is they call this the age of the brain. We're learning so much more about how a brain is developed and the healthy way and the right way to grow a brain. And little toddlers, if you think about it, we're just growing brains. That's what parents are. They're manipulating environments and modeling behavior to grow a brain. And we've just become so much more aware about what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening. And I think that the research is frantically trying to catch up with all of the technology that's being used in homes as well, and what that does to a brain. And so there's just so much more research happening. And we're looking back at generations who did do the spanking, who did do a lot of the punitive punishment things, and seeing how adults are motivated and what kind of stories they're telling themselves and their children disobey. And there's just a lot of, I agree that there are a lot of people who turn out quote unquote fine.
Yeah.
But we don't even really know what that means, right?
Yeah.
And what we're learning is that there's just so much risk involved. There are riskier ways to raise a child, and there are ways that there's almost certainty that they will thrive. So which way would you pick? Obviously, as a loving parent, you would pick I want the loving home. I want the safe home. I want the home where children feel comfortable coming and staying. I mean, there's stronger things than curfews that gets a child to come and stay at home.
Ooh,
and that is having a loving environment.
What's your take on curfews? Just curious.
Oh, I think boundaries are really important. Limits are really important. Children thrive on them. I've talked about them before on my feed, and parents will send messages back and they'll say, I grew up with no limits and no boundaries, and I felt like my parents didn't love me. They didn't care where I was or what I was doing. And so I do think that boundaries are really important, because if you don't set a responsible boundary for your child, there's nothing for him to bounce up against. And so there's no way for him to discover where you begin and he ends. And so it's very difficult for him to create his own sense of self, who he is and what he's responsible for. And what boundaries teach is you are responsible for your behavior and I am responsible for my behavior. And they just are a really great gift for children, is to have a loving home where there are boundaries. Like we don't do that. We don't verbally berate each other. We don't hit, or whatever your boundaries are. And that's another truth, is that each and every home is going to have different boundaries. And there's nothing that says that this is the right way to parent. There are lots of different rights, many, many different kinds of rights. I have families that I absolutely love who are very spontaneous. They don't have a schedule, they just like, whatever. They live kind of more, not necessarily free range, but their children just kind of, are kind of all over the place, but they are a loving home that has boundaries where the boundaries are really important for them, when their priorities are, and they just stick to them. And so, but there's other homes where they're regimented and they're type A, and they're just like, this is our schedule and we go to bed at 7:30 and, and all of that is good too. There's just a few key elements to a home where children grow up and are strong, healthy, resilient children.
Yeah, when you were talking about the schedules and everything, we can be pretty sporadic sometimes, and especially with dinner. Like it'll be 6:30, and I'm like, "What are we having for dinner? And I'm scrambling and whatever. And yesterday I made a point. I was like, we're sitting down for dinner at 6:15 and we're getting everybody to bed by 7:30. And we did that and it was wonderful. I mean, it's a lot of work to be like, we're sticking to this, we're rolling up our sleeves, we're moving through bedtime, but it's really nice to have everybody in bed and to have like some more moments to yourself. So that being said, sometimes it is nice to just say whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that my brain can kind of do both depending on what's happening week to week. But man, that structure last night, that was beautiful.
You know what? Sometimes things like that are just a luxury. You know, you're like, oh, this is luxurious. I'm loving this because it's novel. It stands out. And that's what I kind of have to see. Now I'm at that point in my life where I'm like, it's luxurious to go to bed at 10. It's not that I'm a bore. It's because it's a luxury.
Oh, 10. I'm talking like 8:39.
Sounds amazing.
You probably are to the point though where you have kids that stay up later than you.
Or yeah, yeah, I have a night owl and we have to really encourage her to go to bed.
I know. I get nervous about that for when my boys get older when it's like they're putting themselves to bed because I'm not going to stay up till 11 p.m. to make sure they get to bed. And we can dive into this really quick. I know we're getting close on time, but I get nervous about access to like the internet. You know what I mean? When I'm in bed, like what they'll be doing. So really quickly, can you? I don't know if there's time for this even, but can you share a little bit about when and how you introduced technology to your kids and kind of what your boundaries are there?
Oh, I love that question. It's a great one because that's a huge question on everybody's mind now with raising children and what to do with the tech. So what we've done in our home, and it seems like it's working well, is that, and I say seems because it's not fair to this generation because we're the first generation to kind of figure this out.
Yeah.
And it's a great honor, but it's also a great responsibility as well. We have just baby stepped into technology a little step at a time, line upon line. One thing here, another thing there, and to help them to grow into it. My goal with my children is for them to have a really strong sense of their identity, who they are, what their purpose is, what talents they have, that they can, that they're responsible, that they can manage their emotions before I hand them a phone that is like, you know, well, is the catalyst of everything.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, a thing that we're struggling with as adults, we struggle with phones.
Totally.
And so it's not fair for an completed developed brain to try to navigate that. So what we've done is we gave Erin, that's my oldest, we gave her like an MP3 player so that she could learn how to manage that and when to play that and when to not. And then we would do walkie talkies, and then let's try then we gave her an Echo Dot so that she could listen to music and use it as an alarm clock. Now the girls have a phone that is my old smartphone that they share, and it stays at the house, and they use that to text their friends and to communicate with their friends. So it's shared, and I kind of love that because they police each other. It's like
I love that.
ever.
That's awesome.
They're just like, you've been on it too much. You need to put it away, because
I love
all
the
into
sharing.
each other's business. And that's another thing. I did like a reel where I talked about not giving your child a cell phone as a gift. Wait until like a random time and just be like, here's a tool. We've seen that you're responsible enough, and let's make up a contract together and have some buy-in here about what's responsible use for it. Anyway, I got a lot of feedback about that, and a lot of people were saying, well, cell phones should be private, like it does belong to them because it's private. And that's not, personally, I feel like if you are a teenager, cell phones are not private. They should be something that and mom and dad can get into it anytime. And so I love that they're sharing it. It's that there's no privacy because there's only one texting app and they all have to like, make sure they don't read each other's texts because then, then they won't know who, what
Yeah.
texts are new and what aren't. So they're kind of finding that line between like, I respect you, you respect me, but we can also like see each other's stuff. So it's a kind of, again, you're just teaching them one step at a time how to manage that, how to use it as a tool, how to put it away when you don't need it. Um, and so the little steps at a time, we never allow any tech in bedrooms.
See,
Uh,
that's key.
yeah, it is key. And that's something that if I could stand on the mountaintops, that'd be one of the things I would shout out is please don't let tech go into bedrooms.
I know I kick myself when my kids see me in bed with my cell phone out. I'm like, you are not going to let them do that. So why are you letting them see you do that?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to model all of the things, isn't it?
Yeah, because you can simply be checking your email, but you're staring at your phone and they don't know what you're doing. And so,
Right.
it's just all they're seeing is you on your phone.
Right. And that's another good thing to know is when you are on your phone and you're with them, you can tell them what you're doing. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'll say, okay, hold on 1 second. I'm messaging my friend because I just found out that her daughter's in the hospital and I want to make sure she's okay. So that she's using it as an important tool to help her to serve other people, or they're making a connection with, it's being used for a purpose, rather than just like scrolling social media, which we do when we need to
Sure.
like, yeah, veg out. But it's
Yeah.
it's good for your children to know that the majority of the time you are using it for a purpose.
Yeah. Did you give them like limits though? Because I'm just curious. I mean, my kids are so young, so obviously, the fighting and the it's my turn thing is much different when you're talking about an 8 and a 6 year old and you're talking about a 17 and a 15-year old. But did you just say, hey, you guys need to figure out like who gets the phone when? Because, I'm imagining one of them's in the middle of a long text string with a friend and the other one might want the phone and all that.
Hmm. Yeah. So our rule is when another child needs it for something, they can say, okay, in 10 minutes. So
Okay.
once another child needs it, then they can have 10 minutes to finish up whatever it is that they need to do, and then they hand it over. Also, they're supposed to finish their schoolwork and have their jobs done before they use it. That's something that we still work on and we have to reteach over and over and over again. And I actually had that thought when you're talking about something else, to tell parents like have that perspective that you are going to have to teach things over and over
Mm,
and over and over again, and that your homes will have yelling and fighting,
mm,
and that's a healthy home. Your
mm.
home will have messes. That's a healthy home. Your home will have children who have tantrums. That's absolutely healthy. um, I think that as parents, we put on ourselves the guilt of, oh, like, my home's messy, my children are fighting, my child tantrums, she's whining. I keep having to keep telling him to leave the tech alone. There's something wrong with my parenting. That's all a part of growing. That's all a part of a healthy development, and it's there naturally because it's supposed to be there. Children learn so much while they're going through each of those stages. They learn how to forgive, they learn how to compromise, they learn how to manage, they learn how to have moderation, they learn how to respect. I mean, I could go on and on about all the things that happen in a home that mature a child. So just have that perspective. It's going to be there, and it's okay, and it's welcomed.
I am so glad that you said that because, sometimes I think that you can look at another person's life and think, oh, their home seems so peaceful. Like, I want my house to be peaceful. And it's so cliche to say, but like, obviously, you don't know what is all going on in someone's home from what they post on their Instagram stories. And so it's a good reminder that even when you've been practicing this for years, that, yeah, it's like you're not escaping the chaos unless you have like a couple of kids that just naturally are just super zen, you know?
Right. Yeah, and that's true. There are children who are born just with easier temperaments.
Yeah.
And you kind of look at that child and you're like, no, that's not fair. I
Yeah.
want all of those, like, but it also is very reassuring to know, hey, I make all types. I make some that are very much peacemakers and others that are, parenting 505 type of a thing. And I love that. I love that there's so much diversity in a home, even within your own children, and that you cannot blame yourself for your child's behavior, and you cannot also praise yourself for your child's behavior, because they make their own decisions and they make their own choices. Don't ever like measure your success as a parent based on what your child chooses to do. Measure your success as a parent on what you choose to do and the choices that you're making.
I'm giving all these reaffirming like I'm at church. So
Amen.
good.
Amen.
That's the pull quote from the episode. That's so good. And it's so important to remember, because I don't know about you people listening right now, but there have been so many times where I've been on the floor in tears because of something my child has done. And I'm thinking, where did I go wrong? And it's hard.
I know. It is. And it's such a habitual thing for parents to absorb it all and to feel so much guilt.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like to say is if that was your measurement of success, then no one would ever succeed. Not even God.
Mm.
I mean, look at all of his children who have strayed. And I just think that that cannot be the way. We are meant to be beings who are supposed to be able to have successful lives and happy, joyful lives. We're meant to look at each other as not like problem-making people, but joy-making people. And I think that it's just this rewiring of how we look at things. It's not even that the situation has changed. It's how you look at it and the way that you see it. And that's, sometimes we think, oh, well, yeah, she speaks on parenting. She's a parenting coach or a parenting expert or whatever. She must have well-obedient children that just are wonderful peacemakers. But the truth is that your children don't change. Your perception of what's happening changes. And you do your best to keep things within a tolerable range, but they'll never, ever be perfect, because you want them to be human. You want them to learn from their mistakes. You want them to grow. And that's like the beauty of it, is that you step back and take a deep breath and you're like, this is right. There's nothing wrong with this. This is the right way for a home to sound and for a home to be. And I think that is where we find the most joy, is just being able to breathe and let it go and let it be.
You know, sometimes I feel like I do connect with my kids the most when they do mess up or make a bad choice, because I think, oh yeah, I've done that, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, oh.
Exactly. Oh, just like me. That's what I say all the time. I'm like, it's just like me. I don't like to be made to eat things that I don't like. Yeah. I don't like to have to wear tights when I don't want to wear tights, or, whatever it is. Like, yeah, I'm the same way. Just because they're smaller than us, it doesn't mean they're a different species. We're just the same. We're just a little bit shorter.
Yeah. And sometimes just telling them too, like, give them an example or something of, oh yeah, I felt like that when this happened to me and I reacted this way. And now looking back, I think I could have done it differently. I think that giving those examples, I've recently started trying to do that a little bit especially with my older son, and because I kind of see him processing it a little bit more than, my younger ones. But I think that's been helpful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When you purposefully vocalize your thoughts, that helps children a ton. It helps them to see the adult cogs moving on and how to change what I'm going to say, even though these are my thoughts, figuring out how to manipulate and manage our thinking, that flexible thinking that adults always have to do in order to produce and to metabolize things in a healthy way so that we can manage our environment.
Well, Ralphie, this has been wonderful, and I feel so lucky that I got to spend this hour and ask you all these questions and just have a conversation with you. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was so fun. My pleasure.
I have a couple of the end of the podcast questions here. Can you tell us what the best, most recent book you've personally read is?
The most recent book that I've read is a book called The Secrets of Happy Families. I'm always digging into parenting books, and kind of that's a purpose of Simply on Purpose. My feed is to curate the very best things and what I've read and what I love. And so I really did like that book a lot. It talks about the importance of family dinners and chores and branding your family. It was a great book.
I'm going to order it today.
Yeah, so good.
I know you have a beautiful book collection for your kids. What is a favorite kid book you can recommend?
Oh, my favorite kid book is called Where Happiness Lives.
Okay.
It's a story about a mouse who is looking out his window at a beautiful home and wishing he lived there.
Oh.
He goes to that home, and then that mouse is looking in a window at a beautiful home, wishing they lived there. And so they go to that house, and that house is this gorgeous castle, and the girl that lives in that castle is looking at a house that she wished she lived in. It's the first mouse, the mouse that lives in like the little tiny home. And so it's just a matter of like, oh, like just savor even the simplest things in your life and just be grateful for what you have.
Oh, that's good. That sounds amazing. Okay.
It's a sweet book.
What's a bucket list or goal for your family that you guys haven't done yet that you want to do?
I would love for us to go on a service trip somewhere and just, that's like the entire purpose is to just do humanitarian work somewhere. I would love to do that. That's definitely something that we have on our list.
And then you bottle all this conversation up and your message that you put out to the world every single day on your feed. What is like the big message that you want parents to walk away with when they leave this conversation?
I would say, I would say ignore the junk, like ignore it. Just pay attention and look for the good, and don't sweat the little things. That comes with years of experience, and you'll figure it out when they're behind you, but you'll realize that those little things like the spilled milk all over the table, or not wearing the clothes that you set out, or whining and bickering, all that little stuff, it goes away, it moves on, and what lingers is that pattern of loving parenting. So don't sweat the little things.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ralphie.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody. Did you need that today? I needed that today. That was too good. Thank you so much, Ralphie, for being a guest on the show. You all can find Ralphie on social media. She is Simply on Purpose. You can learn more about her courses and all she has to offer when you go to simplyonpurpose.org. Make sure you reach out, let Ralphie know what this podcast meant to you. You can find me on social media. Why Is Everyone Yelling podcast is just Why Is Everyone Yelling on Instagram. We have a great Facebook group as well. And you can connect with me personally. I am Lindsay Hine 626 on Instagram. I would love to connect with anybody listening, and just know that I appreciate you being here and giving this brand new show a chance. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't forget also to check out the other shows in this podcast network. I'll Have Another with Lindsay Hine, which is a podcast I host where I interview professional and everyday runners. The Up and Running podcast with Lauren and Abby, where they are bringing you all of the latest news in professional and elite distance running. And then we have the Illuminate podcast, which shares stories of people doing really positive, uplifting work in the world. You can learn more. Check us out on Instagram, Sandy Boy Productions. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will see you next week on Why Is Everyone Yelling?